When Neale arrived, we had still a very young group of players and who were still trying to find their way. We were part of, at the back end of one of the bleakest decades in the club's history. The club was sort of looking for some direction and had decided that it would go down this track of recruiting young players. We had found a lot of players from our zone up in the Wimmera and other parts, and here in Melbourne, Ringwood Way, that type of thing. So all this young, talented group of players sort of together, and we're still finding our direction at that time. And ultimately, Neale was going to provide that, even though he was a young player. He was so mature and self-assured, but not in an arrogant way. He just had this persona about him that I guess Kevin Sheedy noticed when he came along too, which is why he named him captain at such a young age. No one probably expected him to be captain at that time because of how young he was, and there are older players, more sort of settled players, more seasoned players around at the time. But it's amazing, I was actually reflecting on this, how Kevin identified him as a young man. I think he was 20, maybe 21 when he was captain, so he was very young. He was still establishing himself as a VFL player, but he identified something in him as a leader. And then the way that his life played out, obviously, he was made captain, and then he went into coaching, which is leadership. And then post all of that, when he was diagnosed with MMD, he became a leader, like a massive leader across the country in what he was doing and how he was raising awareness. So I actually think, like Kevin, to his genius, spotted something in him at a very early age, and it became true. Like what he saw was the actual leadership qualities that Neale possessed as a young man, and then he displayed right throughout his life.
Away goes Neale Daniher. Will he get a goal? It's a beautiful kick.
Back there over the half-forward line. Flying high is Daniher with a beautiful mark.
I guess when people think about Neale Daniher, Essendon people, they think about that game at Princes Park when we looked dead and buried in the last quarter. And Kevin, who liked to switch the team around and never gave up on a game, decided to send him forward. Neale had never played as a forward, not to my knowledge anyway. And he took the marks and they were great marks too. And I think Bruce Doull might have been playing on him, who was one of the better players to ever have been a defender, and he couldn't stop him. But the calmness and the poise and the composure that he showed in being able to just go back and slot those goals, it probably, had his career gone the way that we all thought it was going to go, he could have been that player. He could have ended up playing at that end of the ground, even though we had so many other forwards around that time. Like, he was capable of doing that.
Up she goes to Daniher. Neale Daniher comes in for the kick that could possibly win the game. And he's put it through, and the Bombers have hit the front.
The thing I admire most, it's the work that he's done with MND that's raised his standing in the community. Like, you can be somebody that be connected to, in his instance, you can be connected to, say, the Essendon Football Club, and you can be connected to the Melbourne Football Club, and by extension, VFL, AFL, but his goes beyond that now. And very few players, when you sort of think back in the history of the game, have been able to do that. So, like, it must be an unbelievably honourable thing for him to be able to walk here and see that something's been named after him, even though the Daniher name is such a synonymous name with the game. But for him to be able to step out of just that recognition into this broader recognition is something unbelievable. He's as worthy as anybody that is in the Essendon Hall of Fame.